in terms of the levels of greatness, you got to have moments. James Harden was somebody who was pathetic in that game against the Nuggets, losing 120-101 in Game 7 on Saturday. He was 2 for 8 from the field. He had 7 points. He's a bad player in Game 7s. He's a bad player when you need him the most. And then you flip it on Sunday, and Steph Curry, who didn't even have the greatest game ever, but had an excellent fourth quarter. Big players, great players, shine the most in the greatest moments. And certain great players don't. I think that's a differentiating factor. And it got me to think, James Harden, he's probably 1 run away. 1 run away. What I mean by that is he needs 1 big-time postseason. Aaron Judge, big-time postseason away from immortality. In a lot of ways, that was Durant for the longest time. And whether you want to count that Warriors one or not, that was him for the longest time. Giannis had his run. Jokic had his run. You got to be 1 run away. Josh Allen, we're waiting on his run. He's a 1 run away player. It gives me to think that, specifically with Harden, I don't think that's going to happen with him.
No, he's 35 years old. He has a history of struggling in Game 7s. And I think this could possibly be one of his last runs as a top team, a top player on a team. I think that Harden's best days are definitely behind him. I loved what Van Gundy, assistant head coach for the Clippers, I love what Van Gundy was able to do on the defensive end with Harden this year. You look at the underlining numbers, tip passes and whatnot. Harden was apparently incredible. Obviously, Ty Lue is a championship-winning coach from the 16 Cleveland team. I really like that operation. My issue is I don't know how much longer James Harden is going to be able to keep playing like this at 35 years old. Kawhi Leonard, too, with his injury history, I thought this was the perfect storm for the Clippers. Colin, I picked them to win this Game 7. I thought with Kawhi Leonard and James Harden, 2 seasoned veterans in the NBA, Leonard, who really shows up in big-time games, he won a championship with the Spurs. He won a championship with the Raptors. He's not under this 1 runaway conversation, but Harden is. And I thought this was the perfect storm with him and Leonard in a Game 7. Turned out it was a nightmare because, I mean, that was a 30-point game almost heading into the fourth quarter. I turned it off. I was here doing Inter-Miami soccer on Saturday, and I had it up top, Colin. I turned it off. I turned on the hockey to have on in the background. I couldn't do it anymore. It was a terrible game, and James Harden is a bad Game 7 player.
He's 3-4 in Game 7s. Famously blew that 3-2 lead against the Warriors in 2018. He was famously terrible in that 2023 Game 7 against the 76ers. On the 76ers against the Celtics. He has had bad moments in big spots. I don't think he is going to elevate himself to another level of stardom because you want to bring up the conversations of him versus Dwayne Wade, him versus Kobe, amongst the great shooting guards ever. He doesn't compare to that because of those moments. He doesn't have a moment. There's no James Harden game that comes to mind. This is somebody with a 36-point-per-game NBA season to his name, and he's shooting 8 shots in a Game 7. I don't care who you are. You cannot shoot 8 shots in a Game 7 when you're losing by 20. Mm-hmm. There's no urgency.
None. And
there was no urgency from Leonard either. That team, Ty Lue was 4-0 in Game 7s. That team had no urgency. 1 run away players. James Harden comes to mind. I don't think he'll get there. I don't think he'll be able to do that.
At 35, I tend to agree with you.
Right. And if I'm willing to parallel it on the other side of sports, Josh Allen, he's a 1 run away player. Mm-hmm. He's got his MVP, he has his hardware. Now you need the run.
And with that team, I think it's magnified because of the history of Buffalo struggles and being bad in big games and Super Bowls.
Lamar Jackson, that's not a team that necessarily struggles, but he is a 1 run away player.
And it hurts that they play in the same division, or rather conference, as Patrick Mahomes. You know, Allen, the big thing with the Bills, they can't get past Kansas City. That's their crutch. Lamar, he ran into that 2 years ago. But can I throw another quarterback in there, Colin? Joe Burrow. I know he's been to a Super Bowl. He's had a run, but he didn't end that run on top. That was McVay and the Rams that year. So I think he
doesn't have the individual hardware comparatively, but I understand the point.
Yeah, and like you look at the 3 that we just mentioned, Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson. What quarterbacks in the NFL that aren't named Patrick Mahomes are you taking over those guys?
And they're all one run away. You're talking about immortality here.
Exactly.
And basketball is very similar in that regard because it's a ring-oriented sport. You need a championship in order to be ranked amongst the greatest. You need championships.
Yep,
you need individual hardware.
And that's one of those leagues where I don't want to say everyone makes the Hall of Fame, but like James Harden's going to make the Hall of Fame. He's an MVP.
But they're legacy chasing. That's what they are.
They are. And I think when it comes to being immortalized, you got to get that elusive ring. You got to get it. And Kyle, if I could rewind to the NFL, do you want to know who had their run? One time, and he's still living off of it, is Aaron Rodgers. Rodgers had the run in 2010. They beat the Pittsburgh Steelers. And after that, Aaron wasn't necessary. Aaron was great, but the teams weren't able to get over the hump.
Yeah, he's had his up and downs in the postseason.
Exactly. So,
I mean, he was terrible against San Francisco. He was great in that Cardinal game. So he's had his moments. The team's had their moments.
And the last one for me is Drew Brees. You know, Brees, we could agree that the call, what was that, back in 2017, 2018 was atrocious. They probably should have went to
2019, for the Rams.
They probably should have went to the Super Bowl that year, but he's living off of the one Super Bowl that he was able to win for the Party City in
That's
New
all
Orleans.
you need. He's got individual accolades, and he's got his ring.
And how about a guy who didn't? Phil Rivers. How about a guy who didn't? Dan Marino. So you could go through each sport and figure out the guys who were run away. That's why the Harden thing is fascinating. Because the closest he came was when him, Westbrook, and Kevin Durant were all on the same team, 2013. And he was
coming off the bench.
Yeah. Coming off the bench as a six-man. I could argue that was the most clutch he ever was in his career on a playoff run, was that first year with Oklahoma City playing the Miami Heat.
Well, that's what he wasn't the first option. So that was before he even blossomed as a player.
Right.
He had his opportunities with Houston. He had a 67-win team in Houston. They were up 3-2 on the Warriors with the Durant, Curry, and Thompson.
And that was the team that shot 1,000 threes. They had Eric Gordon. They had Chris Paul, the facilitator.
Right.
They were legit.
And that was Harden's best season.
Yep.
So that was the opportunity there. The Nets, they had a Game 7 against Milwaukee. He was terrible. He was terrible in the game.
That was a Durant foot game, right?
Now, it's terrible. Harden was awful. Harden is not a big game player. And because of that, it's going to hurt him long run in the legacy building, the legacy chasing. How do you separate these stars? What we saw from Harden over the weekend is how you separate stars. What you saw from, and listen, Steph Curry didn't even play a great game, but what you saw from him in the fourth quarter last night against the Rockets, closing them out, that's what those players do.
And as much as I hate to admit it, Curry's run 3 years ago when he beat the when him and the Warriors beat the Boston Celtics, that was his run.
Well, he's had more runs than that.
But
yes.
you understand the point of he had Kevin Durant with, two of them. He played a depleted Cavs team in 15, and Andre Iguodala won the MVP. His run was that run with the Celtics and immortalizing himself as, hey, this is my team. I'm the MVP of the series, and I'm a top player of all time.